It was bedtime on a cold winter night in 2001, February, and my daughter, who was 6 years old, Lindsay-Grace, asked me to come and stay with her and listen to a Bible story on audio tape. And it was by Frank Peretti, who did a series of children's tapes called Mr. Henry. Well, the story of the night was the story of Abraham and Isaac from Genesis 22, where God asked Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac to him. And it was about trust. And I grew up in a Christian home, so I know the story of Abraham and Isaac. I know it very well, and I've heard it hundreds of times. But on this particular night, it struck me in a way that it never had before. It was really cutting me to my heart. And what was going through my mind was, I felt God asking me, what would you do, Phil, if I asked you to do what I asked Abraham to do, which was sacrifice his son? So I was just really struck hard by this. And the tape's going on, my daughter's laughing, she's loving it, it's fun for her. So the tape ends, kiss her goodnight, and I went into the other room and I grabbed my pad of paper and a pen and I started writing. And the words that eventually came out became a song that I called Trust.
If I had to choose between my child and my God, and if the Lord said, obey and sacrifice, I'd pray, yes, Lord, I trust you, no matter how hard it might be. Yes, Lord, I trust you, even though I'm blind and can't see. You are my God, and you know the way. No matter what happens with you, I'll stay and trust and trust.
A few days later, we moved to a new home across town, and our daughter Lindsay-Grace, of course, loved her new surroundings, and she made lots of new friends. Throughout second grade, she got to be friends with a sweet girl named Rebecca who lived around the corner. Rebecca ended up moving away the following year, but Lindsay-Grace was thrilled to receive an invitation for her birthday party sleepover on January 17th and 18th, 2003. So I drove Lindsay-Grace about an hour and a half to her party that Friday evening and gave her a quick peck on the cheek as she dashed through the house with her friends. But little did I realize that that would be the last time that I would see her alive. The next morning we heard the news that is every parent's nightmare. As Rebecca's father was driving Lindsay-Grace back from the sleepover, the car crashed, and our daughter and Rebecca's precious sister Amanda were both killed instantly. Both girls were only 8 years old.
Well, it just didn't seem real. I mean, we were numb. We couldn't believe it. Lindsay-Grace was such an integral part of our family. We just did not see how we could live our lives without her. However, in the midst of our grief, being at the crash site, identifying her body, giving her last kisses at the hospital, planning her memorial service, we were filled with a sense of calm, a peace that passes understanding, and it was just amazing. And my wife and I are both Christians, and the love for our daughter and our two sons has always been intensely deep. But that love has never been the foundation of our lives, and they've never been above God in the pecking order. We always have reserved that place of the most love for God in our lives. And consequently, as it says in 2 Corinthians 4, 8 and 9, we are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, and struck down, but not destroyed.
And trust when the lightning flashes, when the thunder rolls, when the ocean crashes in on my poor soul.
We had an incredible celebration of life service filled with worship music and sharing, slides of our happy girl, balloons, even goodie bags for the kids. Phil ended up playing the trust song that morning, and because it had become so appropriate, and he was overwhelmed by the number of people who wanted a copy of it. So Phil was playing in a band at that point called Northbound. So they got together, made a professional recording of it, and then we made a copy of the CD with the story of how the song came to be inside. So we had probably about 650 people at the memorial service. We were gonna get 500 CDs. It wasn't that much more to get 1,000. So we got 1,000 CDs made. We went through 1,000 of them in the first 2 weeks, a second 1,000 in the next 9 months, a third 1,000 in the next 18 months, a fourth 1,000 in the few years after that. And at this point, we've gone through about halfway through our 5,000.
Yeah.
So we were so amazed at the interest of it, and we never sold it. We just gave it away, but nevertheless, people gave us money, and so we were able to build a huge community playground on our church property with the funds. And then there was enough money left over that we were able to build, in conjunction with World Relief, a ministry for children in Sierra Leone, Africa. We were able to get enough money right off the bat to pay the salaries of 2 full-time people for a year. And the ministry continued for a few years, and after a while they closed it down because of some safety concerns, but the model spawned 37 programs in other African countries.
Yeah.
So we
It's
were
incredible.
very just thrilled about that. And then any extra contributions that came through, we used that to publish a book that we wrote called Trust Story: Inspiration for Handling Heartbreak and Facing Your Future.
Well, it's been 13 years, over 13 years since Lindsay-Grace's passing, and despite our heartbreak, we are continually filled with profound joy. Number one, we know Lindsay-Grace is in heaven. She's with the Lord. And number two, we're seeing how God is using the impact of this situation to bring people to himself, and that's what we want in our lives. Our prayer for those listening to these words or watching is that each person will build their lives solely upon Jesus Christ, the rock, before the storms of life hit, and discover the peace, joy, and hope that come only from a friendship with him.